stock hat, pearly teeth, dear, and he shows them pearly white.
When she sang it, that's the way it should be sung. You knew when you heard her sing that she was the best. And she proved to be the best. She was the queen of swing.
Out of sight.
She is one of those singers who could sing the phone book, and it's very enviable. I'd love a voice like that.
Ella Fitzgerald, the gawky-looking, shy teenager in Harlem who became one of the most popular singers of the 20th century. In a career that lasted over 50 years, Ella sold more than 40 million albums and was awarded 13 Grammys.
That's what jazz is. You can sing one note in so many ways, and she's found the ways to do it.
Ella appeals to people who aren't necessarily into jazz. She's easy to get into, but once you start to delve underneath the surface, there's no one that has the entire package the way she does, the technique.
It was just one of those things.
Ella's groundbreaking series of songbook albums during the 1950s shattered the barriers of what a black female artist could achieve.
Those bells that now and then ring.
But privately, Ella was not always the exuberant figure who appeared on stage. Her troubled childhood was kept from the public, unknown until recently.
The public never knew the full measure of what she had overcome in order to become the great singer, the great icon that she became.
But with her extraordinary, untrained talent, Ella communicated the sheer joy of singing like no one else.
It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Boo-wah, 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 boo-wah. It don't mean a thing. All you gotta do is swing. Boo-wah, 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 but ain't that swing. Thank you. Life has a crazy pattern, and fortune comes to few.
Ella Fitzgerald was born in Virginia in 1917. Her father, William, was a wagon driver. Her mother, Tempe, a laundress.
Baby, what else can I do?
My mother had a very beautiful classical voice. They tell me that my father was a guitar player, but I don't know because I never met him.
Her father died when she was just a year old. With her mother, Tempe, Ella joined the great migration of poor black families seeking a better life in the North.
I was a kid about 3:30. My mom said, daughter, come here to me.
Ella arrived in the New York suburb of Yonkers.
But this is one thing.
She soon found herself with a stepfather and half-sister.
It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. That's what gets results.
Ella was not a conventionally attractive girl, and she was something of a tomboy, but very bright.
You've learned your ABCs. You've learned your...
When I was going to school, I took an academic course, and I felt that I wanted to be a doctor. But I never really gave it that much thought. And then I started wanting to do something else. I used to dance. I was known as one of the great little tap dancers. But I've always been sort of a shy person.
That's what gets results. Bebop.
Blow through hills. Music goes round and around.
The young Ella loved to listen to the radio. Among her favourites were popular 20s trio the Boswell sisters.
The first valve down. Music goes down and around.
Three nice middle-class ladies, you know. But they made music that swung really hard. And Connie Boswell, the lead singer of the Boswell sisters, was Ella Fitzgerald's hero.
Music goes round and around. Low and it comes out here.
They gave her a feeling of music being optimistic and kind of sounding easier than it was to do, and that sort of grace that was always a feature of her own work.
It's unclear whether Ella ran away or simply aged out of the reform school. But still a teenager, she ended up back on the streets of Harlem during the blossoming of the jazz age.
And Harlem was the Mecca. It was the most liveliest place in the world that went on 7 nights a week. There weren't many places you could go to the swing scene, at least not for us, because of segregation. So the bands came there, the singers came there, the dancers came there. It was all in one area.
Jazz at that time was the dance music of the day. You might get a dance beat, and you could also get Coleman Hawkins. You could get a dance beat, and you could also get the Count Basie Orchestra. People could go out to dance, and they would actually get some art at the same time.
Although in the eye of Harlem's jazz hurricane, Ella was homeless, sleeping on the street. For money, she'd sing and dance on corners.
I liked to dance for people because everybody thought I was a good dancer. I got the chance to get a little more money from what I was making, which was nothing at that time.
10 cents a dance, that's what they pay me. Gosh.
She told me about when she had started out on the corner with a few of the girlfriends, and she was young. They would put her on the corner because she was a champion dancer. She would dance, people would give money, then the older girls would take all the money and run away.
Pansies and rough guys, tough guys who tear my gown.
She's basically a wannabe talent who has absolutely nothing. She's virtually a street urchin.
Seeking a way out of street life, in November 1934, Ella was one of the hopefuls at the Harlem Apollo Amateur Night.
I really went on to try to be a dancer. That's how I went on an amateur contest. But when I got on the stage and I saw all these people, I lost my nerve.
She was going to get on the stage and dance. And Ella was the first one that they called. And she got out on the stage, and she was scared to death.
We saw her the first time she ever walked on stage. And ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ella Fitzgerald. And when she came on, she wasn't that attractive. I mean, she wasn't well dressed. I mean, she was a kid that from the street. We couldn't believe what we were looking at. How dare she come on this stage? So we booed her. Boo!
She didn't know what to do, and somebody said, "What are you going to do? What's she going to do?"
And she started singing. When his eyes say yes, and you're wrong in your guess, that's Judy, my Judy.
At that time, I didn't even know one key from the other. I just sang. And I won first prize. Then I went back trying to win more amateur contests.
After her triumph at the Apollo, Ella was back on the streets. But she was about to get her big break with one of the most popular bands on the Harlem scene, the Chick Webb Orchestra. Ella's Cole Porter songbook was a massive success, and she followed it with a series of albums in a similar vein.
It was just a period where she made 10 records kind of back to back, which were just, and they were just perfect, really.
Too marvelous for words.
Wonderful, wonderful music of a period that great songs were composed by great composers. They're what you might call a dictionary for young people to go to find out a good song to sing.
I do go to the Ella Fitzgerald versions just to make sure I've got the attitude of it right, just to make sure I've got the chords right. She worked with the greatest arrangers and the greatest musicians too, so it's like having a textbook for these songs.
In Webster's dictionary.
The songbooks were a big help in exposing her to the general public as something other than a scat singer or a so-called jazz singer.
It could care less she's a jazz singer. She's Ella Fitzgerald. She was great on her own terms without categorization. That's maybe why Duke Ellington liked her so much. She was beyond category, but perfect.
Though there was one category that still remained.
I've got you under my skin. I've got you deep in the heart of me.
Remember, you're looking up out of segregated America. She was accepted into white society. Her voice did her fighting for her. They had to open the door for her. They had to. They didn't want to.
I tried so not to give in.
In the South, in some places, I mean, it was incredible. If you did anything that was wrong, Ella didn't perform, and Norman saw to that. You could not segregate the house whatsoever, and that was written into the contract, and they had to honor those. And a few times they didn't, and they made it very unpleasant, but rarely.
In the late 1950s, Ella finally got to record with her childhood hero, Louis Armstrong.
The home of sweet romance. When you had a glance.
Their voices blend just like syrup.
She just adored him. And he adored her.
They're such effortless records. It sounds like they turned up, got their instruments out, decided what they were going to play, and literally just played it.
Take the break. How my heart is singing while the band is swinging. Never tired of romping and stomping with you at the Savoy.
At no point do you think these are not great works of art as well. They don't take themselves too seriously, but the musicianship on it is total perfection.
When you see your photo picture at the
Nobody in the history of jazz has equaled what Louis Armstrong did. But Ella Fitzgerald got about as close as you can get.
It never seemed like we were really recording because he was always so happy, and I would always mess up because I'd be so fascinated watching him. And he'd be talking and cracking and making jokes, and you don't know whether you should sing or laugh.
Yeah, one more, Ella, one more.
Them doing Stomping at the Savoy, man, it's fun. You want to go to the Savoy, you want to be at the record date, you want to see what Louis chattering at Norman Granz in the control booth. You're wondering about Ella. You can tell if you listen to that record. Ella says, this is a little bit too hysterical. This is getting out of hand. And Louis, no, Ella, you got to go completely crazy just like me. And she's like, finally lets it drop, and they just start cracking up.
Don't grab your throat now. Don't grab my throat either. Hey, Norman Granz, say one more. He must be looking at Lila Hampton. One more, Daddy. One more.
I said, you must be tired after all that work. She says, who's working? I was having fun.
It was always a feature of her own work.
Another of the young Ella's favourites was the father of jazz, Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong, who of course influenced countless jazz singers, because he'd invented a way of jazz singing that really was borrowed from his trumpet playing.
I don't the outlay, don't care to go. I'm home about it, me and my radio, babe.
Doing an impression of Louis Armstrong was one of her party tricks, and she could do it from a really early age. She would revisit it, and it would turn up over and over again in performances.
But as a child, Ella couldn't have foreseen that years later she'd make a series of duet records with Armstrong. They remain among the best-selling jazz albums of all time.
Say, Pops. Oh, Pops, put that
horn down and listen. I want to ask you a question.
What's bugging you, baby?
Well, have you ever been in love?
That was something I think she would have been utterly astounded to have considered when she was young and learning those things for the first time.
When Ella was 15 years old, her mother, Tempe, died suddenly.
It's here that the story veers away from Ella's own account. Her mother, Tempe, died when she was 15, not saving someone from an accident, as Ella claimed, but suddenly and unexpectedly of a heart attack. And the next phase of Ella's life was to be much darker and much more troubled than she would have had us believe.
Get out of town.
While researching an article about 1930s institutional care of black children, journalist Nina Bernstein stumbled upon Ella's name in the records, allowing her to build a clearer picture of Ella's teenage years.
Be good to me, please.
Ella was orphaned at 15. Her stepfather, the man she called her stepfather, abused her, and she was placed with an aunt in Harlem.
Just disappear.
She got into trouble on the streets. She was scrounging for money pretty much any way she could, and that included running numbers. That's the illegal lottery. It was kind of a racket at the time.
Close to
she was a lookout at a bordello. I think they called it a sporting house.
We touch too much.
She got into trouble with the police. It really wouldn't have taken much for her to be handed over to an orphanage.
So on your mark, get set, get out of town.
But Ella ran away from the orphanage, although it wasn't long before the authorities picked her up again.
This troubled teenage runaway was a perfect candidate to be sent upstate to a reformatory.
Ella was sent to a girls' reform school in New York State. The buildings still stand, although it's now a men's prison.
This institution was really a harsh place. There were these buildings called cottages, but they weren't domestic at all. And black girls were confined to two of the most overcrowded, the most dilapidated.
You don't know what love is. You don't know.
There was terrible abuse. Male staff members beat the girls. Discipline was being shackled in your room, being kept on bread and water.
You don't know what love is.
Ella kept this secret all her life. She never spoke about it in public.
Lost heart fear.
She never discussed her earlier years. She was always talking in pleasant tones about that she had a good upbringing and all of that. She didn't ever talk about the dark side.
And there was a price to be paid for suppressing this, in effect. You know, I think that she transcends that pain in her singing, and I think that in her life, it was harder to transcend.
The shark has pretty teeth, dear, and he shows them pretty white. Just a jackknife as McHeath did, and he keeps it out of sight. When the shark bites with his teeth, dear, scarlet billows start to spread. Fancy gloves, though, wears McHeath, dear, so there's not a trace of red. Oh, on the sidewalk Sunday morning lies a body who's in life. Someone sneaking around the corner. Is that someone Mac tonight? Yes, from a tugboat by the river, baby. A cement bag drooping down, and the cement's for the weight, dear, that you McHeath back in town. Yes, Louis Miller disappeared, dear, after drawing out all his cash. And McHeath spends like a sailor. Did our boy do something rash? Suki Tatre, Jenny Diver, Lottie Land, yes, and Lucy Brown. Yes, the line bounds on the right, dear. Now that McHeath's back in town. Found my fiddle on Blueberry Hill. When I found you, the moon stood still on Blueberry Hill, and it wasn't until my dream come true. Though when the willows play love's sweet melody, all of those vows we made were never to be. Though we were part, you part of me still. Oh, you were my thrill. Yes, you part of me still, for you are my thrill. Yeah, Blueberry Hill, Papa do ti baby, Papa say, Papa da da.
You know something, Satch?
What's that, Daddy?
I've been around a few years myself.
Yeah.
You know, between your trumpet and my nose, we've blown 100 years together.
Well, I tell you what,
let's start blowing the second 100 years. Right now, huh?
Let me hear.
Okay.
Old man time.
That's it, Jimmy. Swing out there.
He's so mean.
He's so mean.
Meanest man.
Oh, meanest man.
You ever see.
Oh, yes. He gives you youth, then he steals it away.
Yeah. He takes your nice curly hair, turns it gray.
Makes you rich, makes you poor. He's a dog.
He's a dog.
All your dreams and your schemes ain't worth a dime.
So have a good time every day.
That's right.
'Cause we'll never, never get away from old man time. Old man time.
Old man time.
That boogaboo. Every year, he changes you.
He bends your back, dims your eyes, you see less.
You quake and shake when he's true. You're a mess.
And makes you fret.
Yeah.
That's not all.
Yeah.
Plays tricks on us all.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah.
No sense of rhyme.
So have a good time every day.
Right.
'Cause we'll never, never get away.
Swing it, Jimmy.
From old man time. But there's one thing he can't change. Love that's true stays the same. It goes on and on in every line.
Oh, yes.
So have a good time every day. Don't you never, never get away from old man time.
We beat that, Jimmy.
Yes, old man time.
One more time.
Yes. You know, Satch, it's been a pleasure being here with you tonight. Believe me.
Okay, thanks, Jimmy. Everybody been so nice, and all these messages. I don't know how to really express my appreciation.
That's easy.
Huh?
Just stick around another 50 years.
Wow! Good night, everybody. Thanks a million.
Hey, fellas, where is this Basin Street, anyway?
It's down in Memphis, isn't it?
No, I think it's down in Nashville.
I've always heard New Orleans.
Hey, wait a minute. Here comes the guy that can really tell us.
Hey, Kev.
Look at here. Come on. Hey, Louie, where is this here Basin Street? Is there such a place?
Basin Street, man. Don't you know where Basin Street is? Well, if you don't know, it's going to bring back some memories to me, because I'm going to lay it on you right now. Dig this. Basin Street is the street where the New Orleans jazz band meet. The folks down there live a life of ease. And on New Year's Day, they cook a big, big pot of piggies and black-eyed peas. Yes, sir. Boy, you telling me, I'm telling you, it knocks me off the sea. Everybody down there swinging, swinging on Basin Street. like the Dixieland. You make your Louis feel like a king, man. You make the world we live in it swing, man. You make that old magnolia tree blossom at the mention of your name. You special, fascinational, prove to be inspirational. I think you just sensational, man. Feel like a king, man. You make the world we live in and swing, man. You make that old magnolia tree blossom at the mention of your name. You special, fascinational, prove to be inspirational. I think you just sensational. Papa, do yeah.
the stream, falling leaves, a sycamore, moonlight in Vermont. Icy finger waves, ski trails on a mountainside, snowlight in Vermont, telegraph cables, they sing down the highway and travel each bend in the road. People who meet in this romantic setting are so hypnotized by the lovely evening summer breeze, warbling of a meadowlark, moonlight in Vermont. Telegraph cables, they sing down the highway and travel each bend in the road. People who meet in this romantic setting are so hypnotized by the lovely evening summer breeze, warbling of a meadowlark, moonlight in Vermont. You and I and moonlight in Vermont. Vermont, Vermont, moonlight.
Some take the high road, I take the low road, free from grief and strife. Sounds corny and seedy, but yes, indeedy, simple life.
When asked to describe Ella Fitzgerald's talent, Dizzy Gillespie once said, "Man, you can't see that far. Her talent is like the horizon. The closer you come to it, the farther away it gets." It was 1934, amateur night at Harlem's Apollo Theater. On a dare, a shy teenager from Yonkers took center stage and promptly froze.
The man said, do something. And so I tried to sing like Miss Connie Boswell. And somebody in the audience said, hey, that little girl can sing. And I won first prize.
You showed me the way
Ella first topped the hit parade with A Tisket, a Tasket, a swinging improvisation of a nursery rhyme.
She was trucking on down the avenue, but not a single thing to do. She went becking all around. When she spied it on the ground, she took it, my little yellow basket. And if she doesn't bring it back, I think that I will die.
A new jazz sound began to emerge during the 1940s, bebop, and in the forefront, Ella, with a voice as rich and versatile as any instrument in the orchestra. As the years passed, her repertoire included songs by America's greatest writers, Duke Ellington, Cole Porter, George Gershwin, but no matter the songwriter, no matter the song, it was always the Ella Fitzgerald voice that amazed.
The way you hold your knife, the way we dance till 3, the way you've changed my life. No, they can't take that away from me. No, they can't take that away from me.
Health problems plagued Fitzgerald during her later years. Eye and heart surgery, diabetes, but she weathered them all and even considered herself lucky.
I think I've been very fortunate. I have a family who just sticks by me and keeps me out of the doldrums. And even my musicians are like that. They kind of steer me away from things when they see that it's going to get to me.
Oh, the shop has curly teeth, dear, and he shows them pearly white.
After that first night, that amateur contest back in 1934, Ella Fitzgerald said she wanted to spend the rest of her life singing to people. She spent the next 6 decades doing just that.
Oh, back he's back in town. Look out, oh, back he's back in town. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.